Hare Hare. Hare-o. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare Hare Everyone. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare Bol Premanande Haribo. Thank you, Prabhu. Om Agyana Tarandasya Jana Jana Shalakaya Chakshurunmaritam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manovistam Kapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Gitamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunantam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadhuretam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagadpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Okay, continuing with Bhagavad Gita. We left off last night. We're on text 42 today of chapter 3. This is page 201 in the temple room. Shri Gaur Nitai Ki Jai. Okay, chapter 3 entitled Karma Yoga. Sanskrit and English together. Indriyani paranyahur Indriyebhya param manaha Manasastu para buddhir Yo buddhe paladastu sa. The working senses are superior to dull matter. The mind is higher than the senses. Intelligence is still higher than the mind. And the soul is even higher than the intelligence. Text 43. Evam buddhe param buddhva samstabhya manatmana jahi shatru mahabaho kama rupam durastadam. Translation. Thus, knowing oneself to be transcendental to the material senses, mind, and intelligence, one should control the lower self by the higher self, and thus, by spiritual strength, conquer this insatiable enemy known as lust. Chapter 4, Transcendental Knowledge. Text 1. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Imam Vivasvate Yogam Roktavan Aham Avyayam Vinasvan Manave Partha Manu Ishvakave Bravit. The Blessed Lord said, I instructed this imperishable science of yoga to the sun god, Vivasvan, and Vivasvan instructed it to Manu, the father of mankind, and Manu in turn instructed it to Ishvaka. Text 2. Evam para praptam imam rajasvaro vidahu sakalene hamahata yoga nashta palantapa. This supreme science was thus received through the chain of disciplic succession, and the saintly kings understood it in that way. But in course of time, the succession was broken, and therefore the science as it is appears to be lost. Text 3. Sa eva yamahatedya yoga prokta palatanaha bhakto me sakacheti rahasyam etadutamam. Translation. That very ancient science of the relationship with the Supreme is today told by me to you, because you are my devotee as well as my friend. Therefore, you can understand the transcendental mystery of this science. And text 4. Arjuna uvacha aparam bhavato janma param janma vivasvataha katam etar vijnaninam tvam proktavaniti. Translation. Arjuna said, the sun god Vivasvan is senior by birth to you. How am I to understand that in the beginning you instructed this science to him? Text 5. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Bhavuni me vipatitani Yanmani Davacharjuna Tanyaham Veda Sarvani Natvam Veda Palantapa. Translation. The Blessed Lord said, many, many births both you and I have passed. I can remember all of them, but you cannot, O subduer of the enemy. Text number 6. Ajopi sanavyayatma bhutanam ishvaropi san prakritim savadishtaya sambhavam yatma mayaya. Translation. Although I am unborn and my transcendental body never deteriorates, and although I am the Lord of all sentient beings, I still appear in every millennium in my original transcendental form. Text 7. Yada yada hi dharmasya glanir bhavati bharata abhyutanam adharmasya tadatmana srajamyaham. Whatever and wherever there is a decline in religious practice, O descendant of Bharata, and a predominant rise of irreligion, at that time I descend myself. Text 8. Parichanaya sadhunam vinasaya chaduskritam dharma samstaparanaya sambhavami yuge yuge. In order to deliver the pious and to annihilate the miscreants, as well as to re-establish the principles of religion, I advent myself millennium after millennium. And last text we'll be taking tonight. Janma karma cha me divyam evam yo vitti tadvataha tyaktva deham punar janma naiti mam iti sorjuna. Translation. One who knows the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities does not, upon leaving the body, take this birth again in this material world, but attains my eternal abode, O Arjuna. Try. Lots of nectar tonight. Okay, we'll go back to text 42. So, this text reads, the working senses are superior to dull matter. The mind is higher than the senses. Intelligence is still higher than the mind. And the soul is even higher than the intelligence. So Krishna here, he's giving a hierarchical analysis of the gross and the subtle body, as we can see. So the bottom of this hierarchy that he's describing is dull matter. So like, this floor, this table, these things are dull matter. They're no longer living. They were once living, but not anymore. Sometimes Prabhupada mentions that, I heard him mention today that rocks are living. And sometimes people are like, what the heck, rocks are living? Sometimes, they're just sitting there, how are they living? But he explained it very nicely how a mountain is growing, a mountain is changing shape, a mountain, it gets bigger. So like that, it's living. And these rocks that we're seeing just lying that are apart from the original, those rocks are dead. So rocks can be both living and not living. Kind of interesting. So this hierarchy that's being described is that dull matter, a dead rock just lying on the ground, it's just there. Whereas Krishna is telling us that above dull matter are the senses. We can perceive these objects with the senses. We can manipulate this dull matter with our senses. So this is superior to just dull matter. And further, the intelligence is above the senses, right? So if we're ever trying to, which we should be, because this is our duty as aspiring brahmanas and Vaishnavas, is to control the senses. We can see that the senses are going here and there like horses without leashes. And it's up to us to whip them back into shape with the reins. And that is the intelligence that is doing that. And if somebody doesn't have proper intelligence, they're unable to control their senses properly. And proper intelligence means hear from Shastra. That's where we're getting our intelligence. Otherwise, intelligence, it's just material. It's just temporary. So intelligence is above the senses. That is what Krishna is telling us. And even further, the soul is above the intelligence. So when you're operating on a soul platform, your intelligence is control. When you're doing things that are nourishing to the soul, it surpasses just mundane intelligence. The mundane intelligence does not override the activities that are carried out by the soul or on the spiritual platform. And we're trying to center our life each day to try to operate off of the soul. So all of these other things, they naturally fall in a straight line. a meridian. So here this is what Krishna is describing. And further he describes thus knowing oneself to be transcendental to material senses, what we just talked about, mind and intelligence. One should control the lower self by the higher self, and thus by spiritual strength conquer this insatiable enemy known as lust. Purport. This third chapter of the Bhagavad Gita is conclusively directive to Krishna consciousness by knowing oneself as the eternal servitor of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, without considering impersonal voidness as the ultimate end. In the material existence of life, one is certainly influenced by propensities for lust and desire for dominating the resources of material nature. Desire for overloading and sense gratification are the greatest enemies of the conditioned soul. But by the strength of Krishna consciousness, one can control the material senses, the mind and intelligence. One may not give up work and prescribed duties all of a sudden, but by gradually developing Krishna consciousness, one can be situated in a transcendental position without being influenced by the material senses and the mind. By steady intelligence directed towards one's pure identity, this is the sum total of this chapter. In the immature stage of material existence, philosophical speculations and artificial attempts to control the senses by so-called practice of yoga postures can never help a man toward spiritual life. He must be trained in Krishna consciousness by higher intelligence. Jai. So, Krishna is saying, O Arjuna, Mahabaho. Mahabaho is referring to one who has strong arms. So Krishna is saying to Arjuna, Dear Arjuna, you have strong arms. You have physical strength. Now you need to develop spiritual strength. I thought this was interesting. It's a very nice way that Krishna addresses his friend Arjuna, his disciple. So, understanding that we need to develop spiritual strength, one may ask us, how? How can I actually develop spiritual strength? Well, the first step to developing the spiritual strength is developing jnana, or intelligence, real knowledge. And Krishna, he so expertly, or entitled this next chapter, I guess Prabhupada and our acharyas entitled it, Transcendental Knowledge. So now we're being described actually how to develop spiritual strength. So just as if we're trying to develop physical strength, we go to the gym and we might know that our capacity is to put 20 pounds on the weights and lift, get big biceps and forearms. So we have a desire for, like Mangadarya was talking about, for physical strength or to be fit. So the person who wants to be physically fit, they go to the gym and they say, I know what my capacity is, I'll put 20 on the dumbbell and I'll lift. And in that way he gets stronger. Now if he knows his capacity is 20 pounds lifting on the dumbbell and he puts 5 and he starts lifting and he goes about like that, he's not going to get very strong, is he? He's going to more or less remain the same strength that he had, or maybe even lose strength. So if he knows his capacity, he should be endeavoring to increase his capacity if he's trying to develop some kind of strength. So if he knows his capacity is 20, he might try next time putting 25 on the dumbbells and lifting like that, and doing repetition. In that way he'll become stronger and stronger. So just like the person who's trying to endeavor for physical strength goes to the gym, the person who's trying to get spiritual strength, he increases his sadhana day after day. So Srila Prabhupada, he's given us the bare minimum of 16 rounds in following the regulative principles. And we know where we're at. That's for an initiated disciple. Not everyone may be there. Hopefully everyone here is, because everyone is pretty much initiated for the most part. and aspiring, to take shelter under a spiritual master. So we know that we've come to this actually very difficult platform of chanting 16 rounds and abiding by the 4 regulative principles. So that's not to say that we just keep that as our minimum, right? We can abide by the 4 regs and we can chant 16 rounds, but Prabhupada said this is minimum, So these days, like Ekadashi, they're exceptionally nice to, chant some extra rounds, or, if you're feeling a little stagnant in your spiritual practice, you might want to check the quality of your rounds and, go from there. You might want to try to increase at some, times during the year, or, certain days like Ekadashi and appearance days or disappearance days of the Acharyas. In that way we can develop some more spiritual strength, because we don't want to just kind of plateau and become stagnant in our practice. And additionally to developing spiritual strength, we know there's devotional service, which is, the whole reason why we have the sadhana. Because once we come to the platform of serving God, we're understanding that He is actually a person. He is not just this pie-in-the-sky philosophy, this man with a long beard, or, some big hands or something, as a lot of people think, trying to, sit up on a cloud. No, we actually know Him as a person, and we're coming to serve Him. So one should actually have a nice understanding of His capacity to render service to Him. So if somebody knows, okay, in the material world, I was able to work 8 hours, say, and I was pretty comfortable doing that, and I gave 12 hours to sense gratification and 8 hours to sleep, or 6 hours to sleep, whatever you were doing. So you should be able to measure, once I come to devotional service, I should be increasing this, or at least having the same capacity. So if somebody was putting forth 8 hours at the job, there's no reason that they shouldn't be able to put forth at least 8 hours of, devotional service, during the day, and that's cleaning the temple room, whatever the devotional service you're given is, where, your authorities see that that's the best way to make advancement. So in the same way, we should always be increasing our devotional service and our capacity to serve the Lord. And in this way, we won't become stagnant, and we'll be able to continue to make nice progress in the Lord's service. So this next chapter, chapter 4, Transcendental Knowledge, Krishna starts to lay down this jnana onto Arjuna so he can actually start to develop some spiritual strength. So the Blessed Lord said, I instructed this imperishable science of yoga to the sun god, Vivasvan. And Vivasvan instructed it to Manu, the father of mankind. And Manu in turn instructed it to Ishvaku. So this is a very important verse in Bhagavad Gita. And just in one verse we see Krishna can prove so many philosophies wrong, just with this verse, if you think about it. Because as we're going to school, we're taught a few different things. We're taught that, one, that the sun is a star in the sky, right? That's one of the things that we're taught. Another thing we're taught is Darwin's theory, that man is actually evolving from the monkey. Darwin, he said that the strong survive, right? Only the strong survive. And in this way, the different species, they're going on and they're evolving, and the weak species, they fall off and they cease to continue. Whereas this is nonsense. This is actually made up. This is speculation. Darwin was a grade A speculator, actually. He may have had some original ideas, but he was speculating, as we know. So Krishna, he can actually prove this wrong in one verse. Of course, the Bhagavad Gita, it elaborates on proving these philosophies of just the sun being a star in the sky and Darwin's theory of evolution. Bhagavad Gita continues to disprove these philosophies, but some points here that we can come to understand from this verse is Krishna is saying that I instructed this science to the sun god, Vivasvan. So not only Krishna is implying that the sun is a personality, that there's a personality behind the sun, but that there is a God behind the sun, that there is a presiding deity within the sun. So that's pretty interesting, because we don't really have this conception in the West that, there's a person behind all of the planets, all of these different things. There's 8,400,000, there's how many crores? 33 million crores of demigods. That's a lot of demigods, and they're in charge. Their personality is in charge of all these material things. Planets, material matter, different elements, right? So we know here, Krishna is saying that there's a sun god. And Vivasvan is this position of the sun god. He is holding this position. So just like the moon, he says that the moon, there's a position, the moon god, has a presiding deity, Chandra. No, Soma is in charge of this position. So he is the president of the moon. He is the moon god. So just like anywhere in the material world, there's a president to the country. There's a head of a household. There's a head of a society. There's a temple president in our little society here. There's the GBC man in charge of the whole society. There's so many different positions that are held throughout the world, and in each position there is a head of that position. So we can understand this is no different for the sun or the moon or the earth, or the different stars or the planets. They all have a presiding president in charge. So it's pretty practical. So there's a person behind it. And another thing to this Darwinism, another thing that Krishna is disproving is that, he is saying that basically all of the living beings, they were simultaneously created at once. It wasn't that a tadpole evolved into a frog, and a frog evolved into this and that, like he says. It wasn't that a little chimp evolved into a monkey, and a monkey evolved into an ape, and an ape evolved into a human being. Because we can see that if he's saying only the strong survive, all of these other species, they're still there. So why would they not die off? If we came from monkeys, why are the monkeys still around? What's the purpose for them? So these are some things that are smashing our reality when we're first coming here. They're big paradigm shifts for us, because we're brought up with this knowledge our whole life that this is how it is. The children in school are being taught this. So just like we can understand, the monkeys, they continue to live. So the human beings, they were simultaneously created. So we have always been around as a species. There's 8,400,000 species of life. And all of these species have always existed, as Krishna tells us in the Bhagavad Gita. Some of them may not be here on this planet, but they are on other planets. Just like we say there's living entities on the sun. If there's somebody in charge, Vivasvan, if he is on the sun, how is it that he can live on the sun? And when it gets hot, we get sunburned and we get skin cancer if we sit out in the sun for too long. We can imagine the closer we get to that sun, the hotter it's going to get. So how is this possible? Well, Krishna says that these material bodies, they're made up of the different elements, right? Earth, air, water, fire, air, ether, mind, and intelligence, and false ego. So we can understand, being residents of this earth planet, our bodies are mostly comprised of earth. Whereas, of course, they are comprised of other elements, but this is the predominating element that comprises our body. So on other planets, these bodies, the sun as an example, they have fiery bodies. So they're made up of all the different elements, but primarily fire is the main element that they are composed of. So it sounds a little hard to wrap your head around, maybe, on a practical point of view, but we can use this as an example. If I say, Jagannath Prabhu, let's go swimming. He says, okay. puts on his gamcha, and we go head out to the closest river, and we go swimming for the day. I say, Jagannath Prabhu, let's go swimming for 2-3 hours. He says, all right, great. I say, all right, Prabhu, now I'm going to go back. I'm a little tired. You stay in the water. Actually, as a matter of fact, stay in the water for the rest of your life. You'll say, Mathuranatha, you're crazy. I can't stay in the water for more than just a few hours, It's not possible. Because our bodies, they're not meant to be swimming for that long. Whereas we have plenty of species here. We have the shark, we have the dolphin, different fish. They're completely comfortable in the water 24 hours a day. If you take them out, they may be able to survive for some time on land, but they're uncomfortable, just like us, in the water. Because they have different bodies. Their bodies are comprised of different elements. So they're more comfortable in different situations. So just like that, the people on the sun, they're very comfortable in the sun. But if you were to bring them here, they would be uncomfortable like anything. So it's the same for us. So there's a fad, Mr. Elon Musk, he's trying so hard to go to Mars. That's all he's thinking about, right? How can I get to Mars? How can I get to Mars? Because his philosophy is that Mars is just sitting there waiting for us to occupy it. He's not thinking there's any beings on Mars. He's just thinking, oh yes, this Mars, it's just some dull land and nobody's there. I can just go there and I can forget about Earth because Earth is flawed, but Mars is going to be perfect. So Krishna says, oh, that's okay, Mr. Elon Musk. You can go to Mars. That's completely fine. But not in this life. You spend your whole life thinking about Mars, Mr. Elon Musk, and surely at the time of death, that's what you'll be thinking about. So you'll take your birth on Mars. So this is what Krishna is showing us. In fact, Prabhupada's first book that he wrote was Easy Journey to Other Planets. Easy Journey to Other Planets, he was talking about how the space travel, it's very prominent. They're trying to go to the moon at the time, They're trying to concoct big spacecrafts and spend billions and billions of dollars and make these high-tech space travel suits so they can go to the moon. Prabhupada basically says, this is not possible. We don't have bodies accustomed for it. We didn't go to the moon. And if we did, we can't stay there. If we did go to the moon, we may have came up with some of these spacesuits, and we may have gone there for a second or two, but actually if you analyze it, there's much proof saying that we didn't go to the moon. It was a hoax. This is a hoax. There's very nice points. There's a nice documentary on Krishna Tube that highlights some of these points, as well as Maharaj has highlighted a few more of these points, just with my blessed association with him, and it's a hoax. It's just, we don't know where the money went, and they just probably used it for bombs or something. I don't want to speculate, but so much money and then it all just disappears. The government, it's the position of a politician to mislead the public, So we don't have bodies to go there, so we can't go there, So what a verse. Krishna is just smashing a lot of the things that we were brought up to believe in, this society. So this next verse, it's one of my favorite verses in Bhagavad Gita. Evam paraparam praptam imam rajasro viduhu sakalenheya mahatak yoganasta parantava. So Krishna is saying the supreme science was thus received through the chain of disciplic succession, and the saintly kings understood it in that way. But in course of time, the succession was broken, and therefore the science as it is appears to be lost. So we can understand that Arjuna, he was bewildered when he heard this. But as we can see, he didn't immediately just interrupt Krishna when he was speaking. So this is a cool point that we can take away from this. We can learn how to actually ask questions and have patience from these next few verses. We can understand that as soon as Arjuna heard this, that Krishna instructed this this science to Vivasvan. Vivasvan instructed it to Manu, and then Manu in turn instructed it to Ishvaku. And then the science was lost. We can immediately understand, wait a second. Arjuna and Krishna, they were about the same age. They were around at the same time. So Arjuna is saying, what do you mean? Like, you're saying you already instructed this, and this is like millions of years ago. So how are you telling me that, you instructed this if you're here with me now? And then Krishna basically says, oh, I remember all my births. You cannot remember all of your births. Krishna is God. He's able to do so many things. Arjuna, he's not God. We're man, right? I can't even remember what I was doing 5 hours ago or 2 days ago at this same time. I can't remember what I had for breakfast 3 days ago, So how are we supposed to remember previous lifetimes? It's just not in our nature, let alone remember how it was in the womb or, what we're doing here, what we're supposed to be doing. So this is the science that Krishna has imparted to the acharyas. So just like this is something very important, actually, because everybody is claiming to be a teacher or a guru this day and age. We might think, oh, this person, he has a nice flowing white beard. I heard he's touring on a motorcycle around the U.S. He must be really cool guru. I want him as my guru. Or this person, he says you only have to do 15 minutes of meditation in the morning and 15 at night, and you can do whatever you want, and you'll become realized. I think I want him as a guru. Or this one, he says, I will give you a personal mantra, and you pay me little money, and you'll become fully realized. These gurus, they're all there, and they entice the people who lack knowledge. But after understanding Bhagavad Gita, we can understand how to get direction, right? In the material world, there's something known as a GPS, right? Global Positioning System. And on a GPS, we punch in the directions, and there's a nice GPS lady, and she tells us how to get from A to B. Turn left at the Paseo. Your destination is ahead. She'll let us know. She'll even let us know when there's some disturbance, there's some accident, and she'll give a different route. She'll let us know so many different things, right? GPS. So similarly, we also have a GPS, Guru Parampara system. The Guru Parampara system acts just like a GPS. It is the GPS. It's the real GPS. We might think, oh yes, this is the right way to do this. This is the right way to do that. Oh, this makes me feel spiritual, so I'll take that up. But we're not following the GPS if we're taking that up. And therefore, we could end up who knows where. If we're getting direction without a GPS, if we just stop and ask any Joe Schmo on the street, how do I get to Kentucky from here? He might say, oh yeah, it's north 200 miles. And we say, okay, and we just start driving north 200 miles. If we take this Joe Schmo's instruction, we're actually going to end up 200 miles further from the destination than we started, isn't it? So we have to punch in the GPS. Okay, actually, how do I get to Kentucky? Actually, how do I make sufficient spiritual realization? I see there's so many people giving out spiritual knowledge. But how do I know what is real? In Krishna, he gives us the qualities of real parampara. It's said that there's 4 bona fide parampara systems. So these 4 parampara systems that are bona fide are directly in the succession from Krishna himself. And these parampara systems are known as the Brahma Sampradaya, which is Lord Brahma is specifically imparted by Krishna and speaking it to his disciples. Another bona fide parampara system is the Sri Sampradaya, and then is given by Sri Lakshmi Ji herself, given by Krishna. Another Sampradaya is the Rudra Sampradaya, given by the glorious Shiva, Lord Shiva, who is the most glorious devotee of Lord Krishna. And the fourth sampradaya that Krishna tells us is bona fide is the Kumara sampradaya, which this knowledge was imparted directly to the four Kumaras, who were great saintly boys, who remained actually as boys their entire life. They were Rajarshi, or they were great rishis. So these four sampradayas we can understand are stemming directly from Krishna. And if somebody is following any one of these four sampradayas very strictly, then their knowledge is not lost, as we can understand, because Krishna departed it directly to this, and the chain, it's not been broken over time. Whereas all other forms of knowledge, they've been broken. They've been deviated a bit. Like the Catholic tradition, when Christ gave it, or these other different yoga cults or different yoga systems, Anandamayi Ma, or Ramana Maharshi, or Sadhguru, whoever you want to name, these people, they may have had some saintly qualities and they may have attracted so many followers. But we know we can actually respectfully ask them, my dear sir, you are claiming getting your knowledge from, because Krishna says that this is what the real knowledge is actually from. So if they're saying that, oh, I have just cultivated this knowledge within, or Anandamayi Ma would say, oh, I am Guru, I am my own Guru, I have actually become my own Guru, then we can know, actually that poses a red flag on understanding the supreme science. They might be giving other science of yoga in order to make spiritual progress, some kind of spiritual progress. But it's said that the serpent with a jewel on its head, it's even more dangerous than a serpent without a jewel on its head. Why is this? Well, the serpent is attractive. You might approach it. It might have so many nice, peaceful qualities you see. It might have a nice following of people, but actually, the serpent, it still has fangs and it still can bite you. It still can give you the poison of misinformation and lead you astray from the highest path. So it can actually harm us in spiritual life in the long run. Even though it might, following this person, we might get out of our different forms of ignorance to an extent. We might start practicing one system of yoga that they give and be able to overcome some material things. But we have to understand that this isn't the highest science. So if you're going to take up something, I know personally speaking, if I'm going to take something up, I'm going to try to do it to the best of my ability. And I'm going to try to, excel in it. If actually I see that this is what I want to do with my life. So better we don't waste our time with these other philosophies. Better, we come to the highest. And this is given from the four sampradayas. We're not claiming that ISKCON is the only way to, back to Krishna. By no means. Krishna doesn't say that. But this is what Srila Prabhupada made for us to make it very, very easy. Because actually none of this knowledge that was given in the Parampara system was translated before Prabhupada took it upon his, life and soul to translate these works. So we know actually how glorious Srila Prabhupada is and how glorious his disciples are. We can see firsthand that these people, they were in more or less the same situation I was in the 60s and 70s, and they met Srila Prabhupada. And they actually gave up all the things that I was once struggling to give up, and they took it up. And now 50 years later, they're saints. And now they're trying to impart it to me. So this ISKCON movement, it's so glorious, we can literally see Srila Prabhupada coming, translating, and then a whole generation before us who have become nice, saintly persons by taking up the process that Srila Prabhupada has given us. Whereas in the West, taking up one of these other four bona fide sampradayas
we may not have that conclusive information that we can look at and come to the conclusion, right? If I want to go to school, if I want to study to be an engineer and I've completed 2 years of school, engineer school comes next. I'm looking at so many different schools. I want to see the credentials of the teachers. I want to see the facilities of that school. I want to see, what are the students graduating? What are they coming out like? You know, what are the qualities that these students are developing? I want to see, what are the jobs that these engineers who have graduated the school is getting? You know, and in that way, we can actually see the credentials of the teachers are highly elevated in our ISKCON movement. So much so you can ask them any question and they'll have it answered very practically. And if they don't, they know where to get it. You know, but what a quality. We can see that the people who graduated or were imparted this knowledge from Srila Prabhupada, we can see the graduating class, they've become saints. Their character is completely changed. They've given up all this sinful activity. They've taken up holy activity. And their mind, body, and their soul, they're serving Krishna with everything. That's a quality I want to develop. The facilities. We see there's so many nice temples in the world, but you go to an ISKCON temple and wow, the facility is second to none. Because these are real Vaishnavas. Vaishnavas in the making. They see somebody coming in, they say, my dear sir, you're a great guest. You're a very important person. You know, come take prasad. Come dance and chant with us. Here's how to do it. You're awesome, man. Like, take this up. You know, you're my brother. They're seeing all these living entities as brother. They're not just, you know, brahmanas residing in an opulent temple and somebody comes in and they're just cold, kind of cold shoulder. Oh, you want some prasad? Here's one banana. You know, like that. That's how these temples do. That's not how ISKCON does it. So the facility, it's very superior. You know, the quality of the student, very superior. So we can actually see this and understand. And in the West, we may not have translations of these other sampradayas literature as well. So very difficult. You have to learn Sanskrit, which takes 25 years to learn. Prabhu knows it's extremely hard to master Sanskrit. So Prabhupada, he broke it down simply, and in this way we can apply it to our life and go back home, back to God. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Any questions, Prabhus? Comments? Jagannath Prabhu.
Excuse me, it's gonna take me a little bit. Okay. So we were speaking earlier about this whipping the mind into shape, and I have trouble with this. So I was just wondering, is there a way for us to practically whip the mind into shape? Like, is there a process for that? Because I feel like every time I try to whip the mind into shape, it like fights back with me. And that's like really difficult because I don't have an answer for it, you know. So I was just wondering if there's a one size fits all, a one size fits all answer for this. If you could help me with this, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the nice question, Prabhu. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj, he would say, in the morning, we must beat our mind 100 times with shoes. And in the evening, we beat it with a broomstick. Or it might have been the other way around. A broom in the morning and shoes in the evening. So, you know, this is one thing that our Acharya gives us. But, you know, if we're caught during japa, you know, with our shoes in the temple room, hitting ourselves in the head, you know, I don't know if that's gonna, you know, actually do it. What he actually was referring to was, you know, actually one of the verses that we covered. It gives us some insight. because Krishna is giving us this hierarchy that, the senses are superior to all matter, the mind is higher than the senses, the intelligence is higher than the mind, and the soul is even higher than the intelligence. So if our mind is out of shape because it's conditioned and it's got rascal-like tendencies, which that's the case for all of us, when we come here, we're completely conditioned, covered over by material nature, we have to develop intelligence. So it's going to take some time to actually develop intelligence. And this means spiritual intelligence. This means we have to increase transcendental knowledge about Krishna, and we have to learn how to actually appropriately check the mind. So until somebody has not developed proper intelligence, it's very difficult to actually check the mind. Because your mind it's situated in a place where your intelligence, you haven't developed the intelligence, so the mind is overriding. And then you're just operating it off of a platform of my senses and my mind, my senses and my mind, my senses and my mind. And you're just going back and forth because you don't have something beyond the mind to actually fall back on. And Krishna's, explaining to us like how to get spiritual strength, like you were saying. So quality sadhana, association with devotees, honoring only Krishna prasada, really diving into a deeper meaning in the Shastra. It really, really helps us. And it's going to take different time for everyone because we all have different conditionings. So we have to, back to the verse where Arjuna was being very patient to ask this question, how is it you instructed, the sun god? And he waited to ask this question. He had patience to ask. So we must have patience in order to inquire knowledge, inquire actual jnana, transcendental knowledge. So just keep at it, Prabhu. You're making nice progress and you're being able to check the mind more and more. I can see it practically. We as Vaishnavas, as a Vaishnava, you have a very humble attitude and outlook. So you may not be able to see that you're making progress, and you may think, oh, my mind has won this battle. My senses, they won this battle. But, we have to give ourselves credit for the battles that we've won too. I got up this morning. I chanted my 16 rounds. I came from Mangala Arti. These things are not easy. A materialist cannot do these things because he has no higher taste. We've all received some kind of higher taste, and this higher taste, it will solidify the intelligence to be able to check the mind and, throw up the gloves and, defend ourselves when the mind starts punching, And pretty soon with this intelligence, we'll get strong enough to start, punching back, punch the mind back, beat it down, So don't get discouraged, because you have every reason to be completely full of enthusiasm and be encouraged just by looking at how you're living your life. Sometimes we have to look back. How was I living 2 years ago? How was I living 5 years ago? How am I living now? Wow, Prabhupada's process is actually working. The sadhus are imparting mercy. My spiritual master, he's giving me so much mercy. He's teaching me how to box my mind, how to fight my mind, Any other questions or comments? I hope that helped. There's many different things we can do. Prabhupada would say chant loudly when the mind is giving trouble. And he would do that. Different problems would come up in the temple, and he would go up in his room and he would chant loudly. Go out for a walk, chant loudly. That works. It's given by the acharyas. There's many processes that we can, overcome the mind with. But, understanding the modes of material nature help a lot too. Like I said, that's just jnana too. It's solidifying this intelligence of Bhagavad Gita, and not only having the jnana, because that's one thing to know, it's one thing to have the knowledge, but we need to have vijnana. We need to apply the knowledge, because without application, it's more or less mental speculation. A jnani yogi, he likes to just speculate without coming to a conclusion. Where Prabhupada is giving us real jnana, where we can apply it, make it vijnana, apply it to our life, become transcendental. What does transcendental mean? We hear it all the time. Transcendental means becoming above this material nature, being free from the modes of material nature, transcending this material concept of life, getting off the mental platform, not listening to the disturbances, the kleshas that come up in everyday life. There's going to be some disturbance. Okay, why be fazed by? But to come to that point, you have to understand, Bhagavad Gita as it is. Let me apply this to my life. Prabhu.
Thank you for the nice class. Please accept my humble obeisances.
Hare Krishna.
I was wondering, so like strength on the bodily platform is like one's ability to endure, extreme pressure on the bodily platform, like weight and different things like that. And strength on the mental platform is the same, but for the mind. I'm just kind of wondering, like, what exactly is spiritual strength? Like, are we enduring? What's the pressure that's kind of the impetus for our growth in that regard? Is it like enduring lust or enduring bogus desires, or what exactly? Thanks, Prabhu.
Very nice question, Prabhu. Thank you. Yes, so just as the person who's trying to develop physical strength in the gym, he may be doing it for different reasons, right? Usually he's doing it for sex attraction, so he can understand. So that's more or less everything that people do anything for in the material world. But he may, for instance, he may have a job. He may be like a gardener, or, I know I was a gardener for some years, and it was like you had to be strong to do that. So I started, doing push-ups because I knew I needed some strength, to do this. So just as a gardener, he has to lift trees out of some bed of a truck or something and plant them or dig holes or whatever. Just as, the gardener is relying on his bodily strength to provide for his job, we have to rely on our spiritual strength to provide for our job. And our job is to control the senses, like you said. And this lust, it's this insatiable enemy, Krishna is telling us. So it's always going to be there. So the more spiritual strength we have, we can practically measure this by a few things Prabhupada would tell us. A couple of things he would say is, we have to check how attractive is the material energy. And only we know that. We're the only, say, Chetarga, we're the only person who knows our body and our desires. Krishna also does. He is also Chetarga. But you are not my Chetarga. You cannot understand what goes on in my head and my body. So you actually understand. You're the knower of the field of action, of activities. So you can actually understand, when your sadhana is on point, you can understand, you can tell that Krishna corresponds with you, he reciprocates with you. And you can see this first-handedly. And then when you're a little off mentally or whatever, you can similarly make the conclusion, my sadhana is a little off today. I'm missing something. I'm not doing one of these things. I'm not cultivating knowledge maybe in this category. And, so that is a way that we can actually measure getting spiritual strength, how attractive the material energy is, how attractive Maya is. And Maya, he was saying, Prabhupada also saying sleep and, stuff of that nature, how inclined am I to do that? And how inclined am I to do spiritual activities? We can actually tell what we really want when it comes down to it. Do I want to waste time by sleeping, above my allotted time, or do I want to cultivate spiritual knowledge, spiritual strength? And we can look at it like that, actually. Our conditioning is, okay, yeah, I just want to check out for an hour or two, Sometimes like we're conditioned, we're not even tired and we just want to do this. You know what I mean? So like that's one way to measure like spiritual strength and what it is. Krishna, he is reciprocating with us. And it's like, it's not this reciprocation that just like comes once in a while. Like we can like kind of rely on Krishna's mercy, and we can like pray and beg to him, like, Krishna, please, I know your mercy is coming. Like, let me just try my hardest to do what I know is right in this moment and not succumb to the modes of ignorance and passion. Let me come above the lower modes of material nature and come to the transcendental platform. Let me strive for that today. Just let me strive this hour, and just, you can take it minute by minute if you need to, you know, because sometimes some days are really tough. Some days like those lower modes are just creeping in and we want to just check out or whatever, but we can understand, you know, we'll develop more and more spiritual strength when we start to want to rely on Krishna more and not the mind more. So with that, we're a bit over. So thank you for being patient, Prabhus. Hare Krishna.